Welcome back to another episode of the Michigan Football Network. Now, today, as we all know, the Detroit Lions have a bye week this week. So it's a very unfortunate time of the year for us Lions fans, as it's the first week of the season we don't get to see our team play on, I would say Sunday, but we've played on every day, it seems like, so far this year already. But with that being said, let's go ahead and just get right into the keys, or the review, I should say, from Tampa Bay. My keys for the game going into it were, we have to get pressure on Baker, we have to run the ball, and we need some big plays. I thought Goff was going to have a bit of a better game than he did. I kind of figured JMO would, get his. I thought he was going to have a really good game this week. I'm not going to lie. And then he turned around and, obviously had 0 receptions for 0 yards. So wasn't quite what I expected out of him there. I knew that the Tampa Bay, pass rush was pretty good, but we got out of there without, getting Goff hit too many times. So that was a positive for us. But I think we all kind of came into this game thinking it was going to be a shootout. It was kind of like, well, our DBs are out. Their defense, their pass defense was really never that good anyway, for Tampa Bay. So I thought it was going to be, both guys were going to have 300 yards and three or more touchdowns, and it was going to be tough for either team to run the ball. And then Jameer Gibbs came and did what he did, and just had a ridiculous game. Um, which we'll talk about a little bit more a little bit later. But I kind of want to start on the defense. Um, I feel like that's kind of the talk of the game this week. Although Jameer had his big game, I do think the defense was a little bit, more surprising. We all know Jameer is a great running back, and he can do that against anybody. But this defense, with all these new defensive backs, was definitely a surprise for me. I'm pretty sure everybody else that watched that game too, Lions fan or not. I think Tampa Bay fans thought they were going to have a field day, and they got pretty much shut down. I mean, we only allowed 3 points in the whole first half. So our defense was stellar. Um, Nick Whiteside, Arthur Mollett, Amik Robertson, Eric Hallett, Thomas Harper, all played really well. As starters, and a couple of those guys were practice squad guys. So, like Nick Whiteside, Eric Hallett, and Thomas Harper. And Thomas Harper, I know everybody's talking about Nick Whiteside, and he had an amazing game, don't get me wrong. But Thomas Harper might have had even a better game, but he's kind of going under the radar, I think, just because, Whiteside had the PBUs and the big moments, and kind of made the big plays in terms of knocking the ball away, in the end zone and things like that. But I think even Eric Hallett as well, he really had a really underrated game, in my opinion. He was kind of everywhere. And that's really good for us to see out of our defensive backs. Um, Specifically because, that's a coaching thing. I think obviously these guys are hungry, they have the athletic ability and all that. But I think it's a coaching thing to be able to get these guys up to speed as fast as they have, and also understanding how to use these guys, and also Brad Holmes and the scouting for finding these guys in the first place. But with that being said, before we move on to our next point, what are your thoughts on how the new DBs played this week?
I thought they played phenomenal, and as you mentioned, um, kind of out of nowhere. I mean, that's great. I went in with no expectations and was expecting probably less than nothing, and they kind of, at least for this one game, in a nutshell, they kind of didn't look like we were missing any starters. Like everyone just kind of filled in, next man up, and I know Tampa Bay's receiving core was also beat up a little bit. However, they still started the game with Abuka and Evans, and even before Evans went down with the unfortunate injury, he wasn't killing us. Like, I mean, so they far, far exceeded my expectations, and I didn't freeze, and I'm just trying to find the words because, like I said, I just wasn't expecting anything. These are guys that we watched in practice, and they were guys I was shaking my head at. And even when we like signed them to the practice squad, I'm like, why? Because I didn't see them make enough plays, in my opinion, in practice in the preseason. Um, but per usual, Brad Holmes is correct. These guys look great, and I know you started the show off, and I do understand the disappointment that it is the bye week, but I love that we have the bye week right now. We are pretty banged up per usual, and rumor, I mean, I haven't seen anything official, but rumor has it we'll probably be getting at least a guy or two back after this bye week. So I know it sucks going a week without the Lions, but if that means we come back rested and I don't want to say stronger than ever, but healthier than we have been the past month, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely can't disagree about that. Years past, it seems like the Lions have kind of gotten screwed over in terms of when their bye week was. But this year, it seems like it's kind of in the perfect spot. Um, Obviously, we probably won't get guys like DJ Reed back by the week 9 game, but I do think we're going to have guys like Terry Arnold back, which is a big, big pickup for us. And obviously, we already got Ali McNeil back, so having a bye week after he's come back for his first game is even better for him as well. So definitely cannot disagree with that. And then the last thing I wanted to say about the DBs before we moved on is Nick Whiteside honestly is one of those guys too that kind of stood out in training camp. He was one of those guys that like when we went to the training camp, he
Hmm.
was one of the guys that I saw and I was like, okay, he looks pretty damn good. I didn't even know who he was. I just knew him by the jersey number. I think it was 38 at that time, or
Yeah.
maybe it was in his 40s. I can't remember uh, exactly what jersey number he had on. But this was like the second week of training camp or whatever, so it was pretty early on to the process. I know he wears number 38 now, but I don't know if he had it on at that point. But either way, he was one of those guys that I remember talking about actually after we went to the training camp. That kind of stood out to me. So really good that he could step it up in prime time for out of all the games, it was prime time that he came out and played like that. So he probably earned himself some money just with that one performance. Now moving on to the defensive line. The defensive line, I think, was a huge, huge difference maker in this game. Sorry, had to sneeze there. But the defensive line was really, big difference maker in this game. Obviously, Hutch didn't really do too much in terms of statistics, but he did his thing as always, getting pressure and, collapsing the pocket and forcing the quarterback around. But guys like Tyrus Wheat, Roy Lopez really, really played well in the, limited snaps that they did have. I believe Wheat had a sack and a half, which pretty good for a guy coming off the street. Um, and then obviously Muhammad, he had a really good game again too. He's one of those guys that we've talked about. It seems like every week, but he's just so underrated right now, man. Like
Yeah.
he, it seems like people aren't giving him the credit he deserves simply because Hutch is on the other side. It's like they're like, well, Aiden Hutchinson's on the other side. Of course he's getting sacks, but it's like, go look who's on the Browns. Go look who's you know on the Raiders, across from Max Crosby. Like these guys are great, but they don't give other dudes like they're not just like, oh, you get the sack. You know what I mean? That's not how
Yeah,
that
and the
works.
one thing
Like,
I want to chime in on that is if anyone could play because Hutch is on the other side, I mean, I've just listened to this fan base complain for the last 6 months saying we need to draft a D in round one. We have to go out and trade for Miles Garrett or the next,
hmm
for someone on the other side of Hutch, which don't get me wrong, I was on that train because why the hell would you not want to add Miles Garrett? But, um, yeah, like, I don't think you can say now that, oh, well, of course the person on the other side of Hutch gets sacks because Hutch takes so much attention. And then a few months ago, you're like, why the hell is he not addressing the D line?
yeah,
So,
exactly. And like we've talked about a lot, that's kind of the duality that we have in this fan base is there's a lot of, for lack of a better way to say it, just space cadets in this fan base that are just kind of seems like they just go with the flow of whatever everybody else is saying, and they might, contradict themselves all the time, but that's okay because they don't really have their own opinion. Unfortunately, they just watch ESPN and Stephen A. Smith and regurgitate what those guys say. Um,
which is
but
watch us and regurgitate what we say.
right, the real stuff. Um, Actually, kind of sidebar. I saw something the other day. I think it was Centel that posted it, and it was like Stephen A. Smith has been fired, and everybody was, quote tweeting it and being like, "They haven't been wrong before, So hopefully they're right this time too, because that would be beautiful, a beautiful
Yeah,
day in
not a
America.
fan of his. I was always confused whenever I read like, oh, he's like ESPN's highest paid person, and I'm like, whatever, make your money, man. But I don't see it.
I mean, to be fair, he's really the only one we've ever talked about, and we've talked about him a handful of times. So it's bad as it is. He's very polarizing, which then makes it to where he is, I guess, worth discussing. So then it makes them more money, which is kind of fucked, but it is what it is. I guess that's just
Yeah, I'll
how
say fair
that
point. I've
business
mentioned
works.
Skip Bayless a few times, and I
Valid.
don't really support almost anything he says. So,
Yep. It's
um,
it's usually the people, that are the most insane that get talked about the most. So I'm not surprised that Skip
it
Bayless and
gives me an
Stephen A. Smith
idea.
are those two.
Uh,
Right? Just act fucking nuts on here and say whatever, and we might explode. We'll see.
mm.
Um no, but we could honestly, this might sound crazy, but if Stephen A. Smith wanted to come on the show, I don't know if I would want him to come on the show just because like I wouldn't even be able to have a conversation with him. I would just laugh the whole time. Like honestly, with how his like mannerisms are and everything, I would just be like I couldn't take it serious, you know what I
He'd
mean?
say one stupid thing, and I'll just yell, "Stay off the weed!"
Right?
Like,
True. No, but back to the review versus Tampa Bay. Where were we? D line. So the guys who came in for depth played really well. Obviously, Aleem McNeil we mentioned a little bit with his first game back was just destructive. Like that dude made a huge difference for us. Um, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in depth, but there's a lot of rumors right now that the Lions are interested in adding edge help. With McNeil coming back, I don't really know if we need it because once Davenport comes back, we're kind of deep there. But we'll go into that a little bit later because there are some names that I think do make some sense, and we'll kind of do a little bit of a deep dive there. Um, with that being said, though, obviously Tyleik Williams, DJ Reader both had really good games as well. Our D line really just dominated this game entirely, in my opinion. And then linebacker wise, obviously Jack Campbell had a really good game. Anzalone had a pretty good game as well. Derek Barnes had a great game. Defensively, it was just an all around great, great performance. You really can't ask for too much more than what they did. I mean, they held Baker to 228 yards, one touchdown, and one interception on 50 attempts. He was 28 for 50. So a little over 50% passing completion. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had only 41 rushing yards, which is just insane. I wrote an article about that specific statistic because it was the first time that they had rushed for less than 50 yards in quite a long time. So the Lions really, really did a number on them up front in the pass game and the run game. Um, but point being that the Lions just completely dominated, and obviously Bucky Irving wasn't in the game, so that kind of has something to do with it. But I mean, Rashad White was a starting running back for them for a few years, so it's not like he's some guy they got off the street. He's a pretty good running back, and
they have a
we
very nice
kept him.
tandem over there.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like they have a good O line too. So the fact that we kind of dominated them up front is a really, really good sign for us. Before we move on to the offensive side of the ball, is there anything you want to add before we move on?
Talking about the defense, just in general, kind of like you mentioned, I just want to elaborate slash put it in my words slash um, look at it through my eyes, so to speak. Obviously, like you said, we dominated them. I thought it was going to be a shootout. I thought this had all the makings of like a 45-42 game, and we held them under 10 points with all four defensive backs out, starting defensive backs, and our starting other D end out. Like, don't get me wrong, I realize Muhammad's been playing all year long, but if everyone on this team was healthy, Davenport's our starter. Like that just is what it is. So we had 5 of our 11 defensive starters out and held without looking at the numbers, I'm guessing they were a top 5 offense, um, to 9 points. So I mean, I can't say enough good things about that. I know we had a ton of defensive injuries last year, and we still went 15-2, and we still did our thing. But I feel like eventually it had to have um, be that final straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And I thought that was going to be this week, at least in terms of um, looking like a slightly worse defense just because of the injuries. But as I mentioned in the first segment, those guys filled in so well. And we gave props to the corners. I can't even tell you off the top of my head who our second safety was. I know Rock Yassin was playing some safety for us, and like I said, off the top of my head, I don't even know who was our other safety on the other side because it was Hallett and Whiteside as corners, and then Rock Yassin as one of the safeties. I'm spacing on the fourth D back. Um,
So Hallett was playing safety and corner, mostly safety though, and then we
oh,
had
okay,
Thomas Harper was playing safety, and then Mollett was playing corner as well.
okay. So when I saw Harper all over the okay. So yeah, I mean, I hate to say they're not names, but I mean when you're comparing them to who they're replacing DJ Reed, they're replacing first round pick, however you feel about them, Terry and Arnold. They're replacing the top duo safety duo in the NFL with Kirby and Branch, and they not only held their own, they kind of shut things down. And as you mentioned also, getting a Lee McNeil back was huge. But I thought it was going to take at least a game or two, get his feet wet. You know, he missed a lot of football. It looks like he never got hurt. So I don't know if we just let him get all of his rust off in practice. I know he's been practicing for a couple weeks before we activated him or what, but he looked phenomenal. And as you mentioned, Tampa Bay has a pretty good O line. They're not like us or the Eagles or anything, but they're respectable. Like I said, they're one of the top offenses in the league. And as we've mentioned several times, you don't have an offense if you don't have an O line. Look at Cincinnati. You got some great receivers. You got a good running back. You had a great quarterback before Burrow got hurt, and you weren't winning many games. You got to fix that O line. So the Bucks had a pretty good O line. We have a pretty beat up D line slash rust with McNeil, and we still got it done on every phase of the game at every level of that defense. So I mean, my hats off to Kelvin Shepard, and yeah, I mean we just keep on rolling. I'm looking forward to seeing what this defense could look like with McNeil back and adding Branch, Joseph, all those guys whenever they do happen to come back.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say before we move on is, like you said, shout out to Kelvin Shepard because he really is the difference maker. I mean, I've heard so much about it since the game on Twitter and things like that, just like showing different coverage disguises and how he kind of like made Baker look bad. Like, let's be real here, man. Baker Mayfield did not have a great game himself.
Oh,
Like, there was a lot
absolutely.
of errors by him. But he was also injured coming into the game, and you could tell. I mean, it seemed like every time he threw the ball, he was like stretching out his lower back afterwards, and it just seemed like he was super uncomfortable, and he was just not 100%. But Shepard also did a great job of making him unsure of what he's doing and where he's going. So, a little tip of the cap for that to Shepard. And another thing is Aaron Glenn probably wouldn't have changed his scheme that much coming into this week for the new guys. You know what I mean? Like he probably would have stayed like, look, man, we're a cover man team. That's just what it is. Like, whereas Shepard, he came in here and he helped his guys out. He made it easier on his DBs by, doing these different coverage packages and blitz packages and things like that, getting pressure on the quarterback. I mean, yeah, obviously the DBs played really well, but Shepard's a big part of that too. So, but with that being said, moving on to the offensive side of the ball, as I mentioned earlier, Gibbs had an insane game. He had 17 rushes, 136 yards, two rushing touchdowns, three catches for 82 yards as well. So 200 plus yards total. Just an absolute awesome game from him from start to finish. I mean, that 78-yard touchdown was insane. And then he followed it up with, I don't even know how many yards that run was off the top of my head, but where he was just running through people. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen Jahmyr Gibbs do that before. That dude was like a man possessed. Like, one of my friends kept texting me, like, the NFL is going to drug test this dude after this game because he is just ridiculous. Like, and I mean, it's valid, dude. I don't know what was going on with him, but he was ready to go. Um, And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, did his thing, 6 catches, 100 or 100, 86 yards and touchdown. If he had 186 yards, that would have been an insane duo performance. Um, and then, of course, JMO, 0 catches. So, got to get him the ball somehow. It does suck that it seems like they're not necessarily scheming for him like they kind of said they would coming into the year. And, it's, oh, JMO's taking the next step and all these things. And then, I mean, he might have taken the next step, but he didn't statistically, unfortunately. It doesn't, I mean, I don't know what it would be right now, comparing last year to this year throughout the same amount of games. But I feel like last year he had a bit better start to the season, and that kind of helped him get over that 1,000 yard hurdle. So with that said, hopefully we can feed him a little bit more as the season goes on. And honestly, what I'd like to see a little bit more from us is more underneath targets for JMO instead of just having him run deep all the time, because that's really where I think he does well. Like, don't get me wrong, he's super fast, but I think he's better catching a ball, crossing over the middle, and just outrunning everybody than he is necessarily as just, oh, go, I'm going to throw the ball up and you go get it. Like, he can do both, but I think it's a much more sound game plan, to look more underneath with him. And I mean, we've seen it this year. We saw it last year multiple times. Like, I remember being at the game against the Seahawks. He had like that 75-yard touchdown where he just caught a slant and beat everybody to the end zone. I mean, he's capable of those things. So, and then Tesla again, 0 catches. Laporta had a not so great game, 3 catches for 15 yards. Goff had a solid game, 20 for 29, 241 yards, and 1 touchdown with an interception. Obviously, not quite the offensive game passing the ball that we thought we would have, but still a pretty good game nonetheless. And I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of carried for us, so we didn't really need Goff to have 300 yards and all these different statistics. So, like I said, pretty solid game from the offense outside of Jahmyr, who is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm trying to find the stats on the first 7 games of last year for JMO, but statistically speaking, he is underwhelming so far this year. But I also can kind of see, how do I want to put this? Through the fog, so to speak, because I feel like a lot of defenses are focusing more on him than they have in prior years. And I've seen some, uh, I don't technically want to say all 22, but zoomed out footage. I'll
Hmm.
just say all 22. And he's taking like his corner plus the safety deep, and then we just hit, either Gibbs, St. Brown, Laporta, someone underneath, and we're just kind of taking what the defense gives us. And it's on one hand responsible just because Goff isn't trying to force it downfield to double coverage, but on the other hand, as you've said, we need to figure out, even if he's the one going on the slants and the shorter routes, he's too good with the ball to not get him the ball.
Hmm.
And I will say he did have that one reception for about, I want to say it was like 18 yards against Tampa, but it was called back due to a penalty. So they did target him at least once. Unfortunately, it didn't stick. And then, I mean, I've know we have tried end arounds and stuff like that with him. Just put the ball in his hands, let him make a play. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Unfortunately, I
Hmm.
thought we might have seen one this week because he had a very good one against Tampa in the playoffs 2 years ago. But ultimately, we did not go that route on offense this week. But with that being said, I'm not upset by that. Our offense was rolling. Um, I'm not going to complain when we win, especially in a dominating fashion like that, because we left some points on the board. Bates missed a kick. Um, which no, I've seen some people saying like, is it time to have that conversation about Bates? I don't think so. I will admit, you got to nudge him a little bit and be like, hey, get your shit together. But we're not talking about replacing him by any means. Come on, guys. Um, but yeah, other than trying to get JMO going a little more, as you said, Goff, I mean, completely went off. And then I wanted to look up because I don't have the stats. I do have the stats in front of me. What did Montgomery do? Not much.
Yeah, I
13
didn't
carries for
have a
21.
yeah.
1.6 yards a carry For comparison, Gibbs averaged 8 yards a carry. Obviously, a little slanted with the 78-yard touchdown, but um, and actually, that's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Of course, the big play's fun and exciting and impressive, yada yada yada. I was actually more impressed with his second touchdown. I want to say it was 3 or 4 yards out because he was clogged at like the two, and he had to spin off of that linebacker and then jump into the end zone. So it's I feel like that first long touchdown was more on the offensive line. Kind of gave him a hole, and he just used his natural ability and speed just to outrun everyone, which is great. But on the second one, he had to really be more of that football player than that athlete, so to speak, and make the
Hmm.
play. And he's just very impressive. As you mentioned, they'll probably drug test him, maybe even more than once. It comes back clean. They're like test him again, and then but yeah, he's just something special, man.
Yeah, for sure. Jameer is definitely one of those ones. But so I found the Jamison Williams statistics, and it's
Okay.
kind of fucking insane, dude. Honestly, I did not expect this. Okay, so this season, Jamison Williams, 17 catches, 289 yards, and two touchdowns.
Okay.
Last year, weeks 1 through 7, 22 catches, 452 yards, and three touchdowns. So he doubled last year what he's doing this year, but wait for it, it gets better. So in 2023, you remember he was suspended the first two games of the season, right?
Yeah, that was the gambling.
So weeks 3 through 9 of the 2023 season, he had 576 total yards, 32 receptions, five touchdowns. So he's having his worst season of his career so far right now, statistically. Not a great sign. That's kind of crazy, in my opinion. Like his first year back, when he was having a lot of issues dropping the ball, and it seemed like we weren't targeting him, and everybody was bitching because we weren't targeting him a lot. It's even better. Like it's double the statistics from this season, which is just insane to me. We really gotta start getting him the ball more often in general. But with that being said,
especially
go ahead.
especially after he just signed his extension and now he's not off his rookie or now he's off his rookie contract.
Well, he's
And
still on his rookie deal right now.
oh, that's right. You're right because there was an extension, not a new contract. You're
Yeah,
right.
but
He's cheap for 2 years still.
he's
But
still making like 15 million this year because he's on his fifth year of his rookie contract. So, I mean, that's quite a bit of money if you're not going to use him right now. But with that being said, moving on to the bye week stuff, they moved Zach Cunningham to IR, the linebacker, which is not a huge loss, but it's pretty big. He was playing the Rodrigo role, and it sounds like the team is not really sure when Rodrigo is going to come back. So, lost another linebacker. We'll see what's going on. You made a face that seems like there's different news that's out.
to my knowledge, I read something that he's expected to come back after the bye week.
Oh, really? Okay. I think it was last week I saw something saying
He
they
should be
weren't
back
really
at
sure.
practice this
Okay.
upcoming the next week. So I
Okay.
don't know if he will play yet. He might have his McNeil situation where he's back at practice for a week or two. That's what I read.
Gotcha.
But he was
Gotcha.
one of the names where I'm like, we might be getting a couple people back, so we'll
Yeah.
see.
And I mean, if we do get Rodrigo back, then it's really a moot point. I mean, he's better than Cunningham anyway. But Terrion Arnold is probably going to be back after the bye. Reed should be back shortly after that too, just a couple weeks maybe. Which that'll be huge for the Lions, as we hopefully will be healthy going in the back half of the season because we should also be getting Davenport back shortly after the bye week as well. He might be a little bit longer than Reed, but we should get him back before playoffs either way. And then the last thing on the Lions before we move on, I want to talk about the trade possibilities because we're hearing a lot of rumors right now that the Lions are looking to trade for an edge rusher. Which, we kind of talked about it a little bit before with Aleem McNeil coming back. Maybe we don't necessarily want to go ahead and make a big splash for an edge rusher, which I don't think we ever really wanted to do that anyway. I think if we did, Brad Holmes would have done it. But I do think there's a handful of guys that could be had. And I actually wrote an article about this pretty recently. So go check that out at MichiganFootballNetwork.com. Six edge rushers that the Lions could actually trade for. I didn't put on anybody on this list like Miles Garrett or TJ Watt or anything crazy like that because that's just not going to happen. Even Trey Hendrickson, that's not going to happen, okay? But there's a list of names that could be realistic options for the Lions that won't break the bank financially or in terms of capital, draft picks and stuff like that that we have to give up. So I'll just go through a quick synopsis of each of these players so that I don't, ruin the article for you. So you can still go check that out and get all the more in-depth stuff. But first up is Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher from Miami. Um, in my opinion, I don't know if this guy really fits what we're looking for necessarily. He is a pure pass rusher. He's not really a run stopper by any means, and he's also more of a finesse guy. And it seems like, our defense likes more power rushers, more strong run stoppers on the edge to kind of collapse the pocket and keep the quarterback in rather than just getting off and going to get a sack. But I don't think that rules out the possibility that we would trade for a guy like Jalen Phillips simply because, man, look, he's only 26 years old. He is 10th in hurries and 17th in pressures. He does only have one sack this year, but, he's getting to the quarterback at least, and he's getting a lot of pressure. So, he has a pressure rate of 15.1%, which for reference, Aiden Hutchinson has a pressure rate of 15.8%, which I wrote this last week, so some of these numbers might not be perfect, but they should still be pretty similar to what they are right now after only 1 week difference. And his pressure rate is better than Jeffrey Simmons, Daniil Hunter, Rashawn Gary, and Max Crosby, who, I mean, everybody kind of looks at as top tier at their positions. So I think getting a guy like Jalen Phillips could make a big difference, and it won't cost a lot. It should only cost like a fourth round pick at most. I think we could even get a sixth round pick back in that deal, which would be obviously ideal to get more capital back. But the Dolphins are just selling. And Phillips is in the last year of his contract. Obviously, he's a young guy, but he's not really as good of a player as he is. He's not a guy you go spend $25 million a year on. And that's what Miami would have to do to keep him, I think. So I think the Lions could definitely go get a guy like that. Um, Now, he is getting paid this year. I think he's getting like 15 million or something along those lines. But we can absorb that this season and not really have to worry about it too much. But I do think he would be one of the more ideal candidates in terms of trade for the capital that he gives up, and I think he fits alongside Hutch simply because we also have Davenport, man. And once Davenport comes back, there's our run stopper, there's our edge setter. Then we can use Phillips to be more of our pass rush guy, and then we have a really, really nice D line all the way across, all the depth. Muhammad, Davenport, Hutch, you know, Phillips, Aleem, Reeder, all these guys that we've talked about already. So
Tylee.
I think, yeah, exactly. This would be a huge addition, I think, that wouldn't break the bank. But what are your thoughts on adding Jalen Phillips via trade?
Um, I haven't been paying too much attention to his statistics, so I'm glad you brought those up. I have heard his name linked to us a fair amount, and with him having less than a 1% pressure rate difference in Hutch, I mean, hell, if we can get that for a fourth, I think that's a no-brainer, especially with this contract being affordable, I would say. And, it's a light-hearted, go all in kind of move. We're not trading away a first or a second or anything like that. And at the same time, we are getting help now, today, this year. And if he performs well, we could potentially re-sign him. And if he doesn't, or if it does, it could be like a Zadarius Smith situation where we have him for that half of a year, and then he goes on and does whatever else. But it's in my opinion a good middle ground if it will only take a fourth for him, um or even I don't know, like fifth, sixth pick swap, whatever. They can figure that out. Brad knows 20 times more than that than I do, more than 20. But yeah, like I wouldn't mind him. I've also seen Arden Key's name getting tossed around, linked to us, and I don't know if
Yeah, he was one of
I
those guys I was definitely going to bring up as well.
I don't know if he's someone I want. I mean, I wouldn't mind him, but I don't know if he's someone I want or if he's someone that's being just forced on us. I think this is the third or fourth year that his name's come up linked to us in either free agency or trade. Because if I'm not mistaken, it was either this offseason or last offseason we brought him in for a free agent workout and we did not sign him. So I don't know why per se we would trade for him if we didn't want to sign him for just the money, but that's another name I've seen more commonly linked to us.
Yeah, and I guess that'll give us a good segue into the next person, which is Arden Key. He is I kind of get what you're saying, but I also think it was more Arden Key chose Tennessee over us because they were willing to pay him a little bit more rather than us just not really wanting him.
Fair
Because
enough.
he's on his last year of his deal right now too. And Arden Key, which is it's funny that you brought him up. I was actually going to talk about him last because I think he's the one I want the most in terms of just like cost. Because, dude, we could probably get him for a sixth round pick or a seventh round pick at this point. I mean, he is not. I hate to say this because it makes it sound like he's a bad player, but he's just not been productive this season. Unfortunately, like he had a pretty good couple years before this season, but this year he's just not doing that great. He's 29 years old. He's due a little under $10 million a year. But he's in the final year of his deal. So it would definitely be a rental. He only has a sack and a half right now, five pressures, and a pressure rate of 5.2%. So he is really not a difference maker necessarily. However, we also have to put into context who he's playing with. I mean, think about it. Who does Tennessee have on their D line other than Simmons?
I was gonna say Simmons, but you said other than, so I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, they have uh oh shoot. I am spacing on his name. He
They
is a
don't have Landry
young.
anymore, right?
No, they don't. He went to
Yeah.
New England.
Okay,
The
yeah.
young defensive tackle that's next to Simmons, Tavondre Sweat. That's who I'm thinking of. Pretty solid player, but he's not a great
Is
pass
is he
rusher.
is that the rookie from Texas?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
second year player now, but yes,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
young guy. But
I knew
um,
about him in the draft realm, but I'm just like I
yeah,
couldn't remember what team drafted him.
he's a pretty solid player, but he's not like a true pass rusher by any means. And then they also have Draymond Jones, which again, he's a guy we're going to talk about next, but nothing special really over there in Tennessee other than Simmons. Whereas in Detroit, we have Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, Tyleek Williams, all these guys we just talked about. That I think if we can go get a guy for a sixth round pick, it'll be exactly what happened with Zadarius Smith, in my opinion. You go get him for a sixth round pick, plays for your team for 8 games or whatever it is, and then in the playoffs and all that stuff, and then he just walks at the end of the year because you're not going to re-sign him, and you gave up a sixth round pick for him, so it doesn't really matter. Like that's why I think he's my favorite because, dude, like we just mentioned, we already have all these guys on the D line, and with Marcus Davenport and Muhammad uh, already on the edge, we
Pascal
don't
coming back
need.
some point.
Yeah, Pascal's coming back as well. We don't really need a Miles Garrett, Max Crosby. We need a guy who can go in there, rotate, and be a pass rusher. Like that's all we really ask for right now. And I would love Jalen Phillips, but he's a little more expensive in terms of capital and money. And I also think there's a chance we could extend Arden Key for pretty cheap, man. I think we could get him for like a year for like 6 million if he decides to come back and really enjoys it here. So I think that is even another reason why it lends in his favor. I think at least. Um, but with that being said, since excuse me, the year before this year, he had 6.5 sacks, 38 pressures, and a pressure rate of 10.1%. So it's not like he's washed. You know what I mean? It's not like he just sucks. I just think he's having a down year right now, and I think if we traded for him, it would make a big difference for him and for us. And then next, the other Tennessee edge rusher, Draymond Jones. He's a guy that I think we could get for even less than Key, but I like him even less than Key because he's not a pure pass rusher, really. He's not gonna, you know, I don't really know if he's better than Marcus Davenport or Muhammad. Kind of is the vibe I get from him. So he's one of those guys that he'd be super cheap. Get him for a seventh round pick. We'd only be taking on around $2 to $3 million for his contract. So I could somewhat see it, but he only has one sack, 10 pressures, and a pressure rate of 7.4%. The only real thing that I could see us going after Draymond for is his versatility. You know, he's 6'3", 281, so he can play inside or outside, which obviously I think Shepard likes a lot. But, you know, guys like Tyrus Wheat play the exact same spot as Draymond Jones. And again, I don't know if Draymond Jones is better than Tyrus Wheat right now based on the last few weeks that he's played with us. So that one doesn't intrigue me too much, but that's just another one that we could actually realistically go after. Um, and then we have two more. Bradley Chubb from Miami, the other Miami pass rusher. This one I think is, I kind of went in, you know, in order of the odds that I think this is going to happen. I think that this one is kind of one of the least likely to happen simply because yeah, it might only cost a fifth round pick to get him, but he's due, you know, 30 plus $1 million over the next 3 seasons. So the only real way that the Lions would do this move is if Miami takes on a little bit more of that cash because we would only inherit about 20 million cap hit over the next 2 years for him, but that's still way too much, man. Even for a guy, you know, he's having a decent season. He's got 4 sacks, 15 pressures with a pressure rate of 12.8%, but he's also 29 years old and he's due $75 million over the next 3 seasons. Just not something I really want to do. And the only reason we would do something like this is to cut him after the year because he doesn't have any guaranteed money left, so we could do that. But again, I see this as like a last ditch effort. Like if there's absolutely nothing left and Holmes just feels like we have to make a move. I don't really love that move for us. And then the last one, which is the least likely in my opinion, Kayvon Thibodeau. Okay, hear me out. I still think it's possible because he has 2 years left on his deal. I also think it's possible that we could get him for like a third round pick, or you know a couple later round picks or something like that. The
Just to
current
quickly throw it in there, we do not have a third round pick this year.
correct, we do not have a third round pick this year, but I do think there's potential the Giants could even take one for next year, or that's kind of why I brought up, you know, maybe a fourth and a fifth or something, just to make the value equal. I know most people think Thibodeau would get at least a second round pick, which I wouldn't be surprised. He does have 2 years left on his deal. He is having a pretty good year. Um, he's having his best uh, run defense season with a 78.4 PFF grade, and he has a 71.4 overall PFF grade, which are both career highs. He has 3 sacks, 20 pressures, and a pressure rate of 10.6%. Um, Still a
Interesting that
good
he's
player.
having his career year when they put Abdul Carter on the other side of him.
So, and this is the thing. Technically, he is rotating in this year because Arden Key, Abdul Carter and Brian Burns play majority of the snaps. I mean, actually, the first few weeks they were playing Abdul Carter at linebacker. Crazy enough. So, I mean, I think his thing, I don't, not to discount your point, but I think Kayvon's thing is he's just kind of figuring it out this year versus because he's got someone good across from him because he's had Brian Burns for the last 2 seasons, who is pretty damn good. But I think the difference is Kayvon has put the work in to become a better run defender because that was his knock. I mean, coming out of college,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
all thought that like his run defense was just terrible. I mean, in college, let me rephrase that. It wasn't terrible. Wasn't great though. Like there was
It was
many
pretty
times.
bad.
Yeah, it was a lot of effort too, just like effort stuff. Like he just wasn't giving it as all when he should have been. So the Lions would only take on about 5 million this season, but then they would take on 14.75 million next season, which honestly is not that bad.
Yeah,
Like
it's not bad.
I might do this deal simply because think of pairing Kayvon with Hutch when Kayvon's going up, and these guys were picked only 3 picks away from each other in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I had it was pre-podcast, obviously, but I had in almost every single mock us taking Thibodeau with our second overall pick, assuming Hutch was going number one.
Hmm. Yeah, and
So
I think that was a, you know, a very common thing at that point because, like you said, Hutch was supposed to go number one, and then they ended up taking Walker. So it's one of those things that, like, in hindsight, like if I told you on draft night that the Lions ended up with both of them in a couple of years, you'd be ecstatic. Which obviously it didn't end up. Kayvon didn't necessarily end up being the player we thought he would be. But at the same time, I think he would be a damn good addition for us. I just don't know
Absolutely.
if it's worth giving up a second round pick, if I'm being honest, especially because, like you said, we don't have a third. Now, we could get a compensatory pick. We'll see how that shakes out this offseason. But the last thing I'll say is there is a chance the Giants just hold on to him because, I mean, they like to rotate their guys. They're keeping him healthy. He's got 2 years left. And Brian Burns got paid. He is only 27, but I could see in a year or two them deciding, like, look, man, Kayvon only wants 20 million or whatever it is. We're paying you 40, and I don't really think you're double the player he is. So we're going to go ahead and trade you, get the picks back or whatever that we traded for or traded for you, and just keep Kayvon. So this is one of those kind of like a prayer almost, more than I think it's that realistic. And actually, we do have one more, Calais Campbell, which I'll be real quick about. Obviously, the Lions have wanted him for the last few years in free agency. I think we could get him for like a seventh round pick. Even I don't even know. Maybe we could even just throw a young player over there that we don't really need anymore or use that often. Um, and obviously, he's not a true edge rusher or anything like that, but he embodies what we want. He can play the closed end on the other side of Hutch. So I think this is one of those that's like, if we can't get anybody else and we know he fits here culturally and, he fits
Yeah.
here schematically, I don't see why we wouldn't do it, especially because, we've been interested in him in the past. So,
Yeah, he might be my number one target just because he is a vet. He is a known high character guy. He is a um I'll just say a well-rounded player. Like obviously he's not in his prime anymore, but at least I didn't look up his numbers this year, but at least in the past he's been very stout against the run and pass. Like he's just a plug and play guy that you know what you're getting. Like to me it's a no-brainer and I was thinking maybe a sixth, but I mean, hell, I'll take a seventh if that's all it takes. But yeah, out of the guys you named in terms of bang for your buck, I think he might be the number one on my list.
yeah, and he's probably pretty high up there for me too. The only reason I think I would rather have Key is simply because he adds the pass rush. Whereas Calais is more of a run stopper, but he can rush the passer. This year he has a PFF grade of 74.7, 3 sacks, 13 pressures, and a pressure rate of 9.9%, and he's only due $3 million. So it would be nothing for us to make that move. And honestly, I think that one might be the most realistic for a plethora of reasons. But with that being said, we'll see. I don't really know if the Lions are even going to make a move, if I'm being honest with you. I know that we have talked about it many times, and I know it's rumored, but I just don't know. My ideal scenario is we get both. Call me crazy, but I would trade a sixth for Arden Key and a seventh for Calais Campbell right now, get them both, and just have an insanely deep defensive line, because then you could add some of those guys back to the practice squad that have been, playing for us these last few weeks and just have such good depth that you can literally do whatever you want on the defensive front. Um, and again, giving up a seventh and a sixth is not that much for players of that caliber. So, with that being said, moving on to our NFL games of the week. Obviously, the Lions have a bye week, so there's no, preview or keys or anything for this week. So my first game of the week is Washington at Kansas City. For a plethora of reasons. Washington and Kansas City were coming into this season as two of the best teams in the NFL, and both of them have kind of sputtered. Washington isn't playing as well as they were last year. Jaden Daniels has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Um, excuse me, but uh, he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Obviously, Kansas City just got a big win against us. Not this past week, but the week before. So they're kind of riding high off of that. and I could see this going either way, honestly. But I think if Kansas City wins this game, they are just going to keep that train rolling like they have been, and continue to be one of the better teams in the NFL. However, if Washington wins this game, we might be having a different conversation about them because maybe they just had a rough few weeks to start the season. But I think it'll be a close one. I think it could go either way. And I think, especially because, cross my fingers, the Commanders should be healthy. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and Debo Samuel have not really been healthy too many times together this season. So that's a big, big dip for them. Um, and then my second game of the week is Green Bay at Pittsburgh, which I think most people are going to pick this one as well because, I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers versus the Packers. And I saw a stat the other day. The Packers have not defeated the Steelers in Pittsburgh since 1970.
I take stats like that with a grain of salt for two reasons. One, I need to know how many games they played in Pittsburgh in that
Hmm.
time span because it's not a divisional, hell, it's not even a conference opponent. So that might only be like 6 games in that time span. So that sounds horrific, but I am curious on how many games were played in Pittsburgh for that stat to.
18.
Okay, that is significant. I was saying, I'm like, if it's 6 or something, like, it's
And
fun to.
actually, they've played one, two, three, 4 times in the last 10 years.
Hmm.
So Stafford, Stafford, Rodgers was on that 2017, well, 2013, 2017, and 2020 team that went to Pittsburgh and won. I'm sorry, went to Pittsburgh and
Lost.
lost, I should
Okay.
say. Yeah.
Well,
Kind of a
interesting.
crazy stat, but
So if
I
Love pulls it off, he's done something that Rodgers never could there.
yep, against
Okay.
Rodgers, which is
Yeah.
pretty sweet. And honestly, I saw what Rodgers said about Green Bay, like, oh, this isn't a revenge game. I still have a lot of love for everybody, but it's like, come on, bro, let's be realistic here. You want to beat them. Like it's not like every other game where you just want to win, just to win. It's like you want to beat them to be like, see, shouldn't have got rid of me in the first place. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Just like golf versus the Rams or Stafford versus us. Like,
yeah,
oh, the Stafford versus us, maybe not because he has to be traded, but
right. But yeah, so I also think it's going to be a good game on the field, not just, in the storylines,
yeah.
because Green Bay and Pittsburgh are both pretty good teams. They both play relatively similar football, I would say. They're both like run first, kind of. They want to be run first, at least. I think Pittsburgh isn't quite as much run first as the Packers are, but they have a similar like vibe about them, I guess. Two historic franchises. Um, they rely on their defense and their run game. You know how that goes. So I think it could be a really good game. It should be a close game. Um, we'll see who wins this. I do think Green Bay is the better team right now, but I could also see Pittsburgh winning this game simply because they have a lot of firepower on both sides of the ball. I mean, they have obviously DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers and all that on offense, but then they also have TJ Watt and those guys on defense. So should be a good game, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for those exact reasons, I also had um, Green Bay at Pittsburgh as one of my 2 games for the week. And then my other game would be Dallas at Denver. Surprising, at least surprising to me, I kind of wrote Dak Prescott off. He's having a hell of a year, and he is currently number 2 in the league in yards. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's tied for first. Looking it up now. He is third in touchdowns. So number 2 in yards, number 3 in touchdowns on the season. Denver has a outstanding defense, especially a pass defense with Patrick Surtain locking things down over there. I did not give enough credit to George Pickens. I did not see him being that big of a deal. In Pittsburgh, I did not see him translating super well to Dallas. He's been looking pretty damn good. And now that CeeDee Lamb is back, they have both of them. Ferguson has been one of the best tight ends in the league this year. Um, I had him in fantasy the last 2 years, except for this year, because over the last 2 years he wasn't doing great. So I said I'm finally done with him, and now he's breaking out. So So they have three legitimate receiving threats, and Denver just has a heck of a defense. So I feel like that game is going to be one that I think the people that know football will like kind of circle on the calendar, but I think the average Joes and Janes that just casually watch aren't as excited as that game as maybe they should be. And who knows? Like, just like Detroit versus Tampa, I thought it was going to be a shootout. Clearly, it wasn't. Maybe I'm hyping this game up a little too much, but I am going to be headhunting this game and seeing if I can make sure I watch it this week, especially with the Lions not playing. And then, just as a quick note to jump back to the trading of draft picks, we do have an extra sixth round pick this year from one of our prior trades. So we are missing our third, but we do have a prior sixth just for what it's worth.
Well, and that's Brett Holmes for you, baby. We might be able to go get Arden Key, and I think that's kind of what he's thinking in his head right now too. Is that we see all these rumors of he's going to get an edge rusher, and people are like, "Oh, how we don't have a third round pick? How are we going to get anybody?" I think Brad Holmes is literally like, "I'm only willing to trade a sixth round pick. That's about it. And if we don't get somebody, we don't, because we don't really need them. But if we do get somebody, we could go to a whole nother level on defense." So I kind of think that's his train of thought. But with that being said, we will move on to the final piece of the podcast. But before we do that, go ahead and check out Fanatics. The link is in the description. Buy anything that you would like, sports memorabilia, sports apparel. They always have really good deals. So click the link in the description and check them out. Um, but with that being said, it is rivalry week, baby. Michigan State in Lansing, which I'm a Michigan fan. I kind of hate playing in Lansing because I have PTSD. Because it seems like we always play worse when we're there. Outside of what was it? Not last year, the year before, when we just absolutely throttled them. Um, but I think it's going to be another one of those games where we just beat up on little brother. Um, Unfortunately for them, they are super dysfunctional. They just are not doing great this year. Um, but before we get too much into that, let's talk about the game against Washington from last week. Me and you both said it was going to be a tough game for Michigan. Washington coming in 5-1, really good offense. They can pass the ball, they can run the ball. Both kind of thought it was going to be a shootout. It wasn't. Ended in a Michigan dominant performance for the most part. Um, Defensively, specifically, we dominated. Three interceptions. We only allowed 7 points, 40 rush yards. And then, Derek Moore had two sacks himself as well. So, really good game defensively from us. And then, obviously, Underwood had a really good game too, 21 for 27, 230 yards, two touchdowns. Jordan Marshall had an insane game, 25 carries, 144 yards, and a touchdown. And then Marshall, the tight end, had a really good game as well with 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. So, really did not see this coming from Michigan this week. And it seems like they are as up and down as this season has been. Hopefully, they're just going to stay up this time because it's been, like I said, it's just been such an up and down season as a Michigan fan. And if we can kind of go into Michigan State and roll over them, I think we could be off to the races for the rest of the season. Because I just think it took a while for us to figure it out. New coaching staff, new quarterback, new everything, similar to how the Lions are this year. There's a lot of new going on in Michigan. So hopefully we figured it out, and hopefully we can go in there and dominate Michigan State like we should.
That would be nice, and in fact, I would say, as a Michigan fan myself, mandatory. Um, it doesn't matter how bad our teams have been in the past. Last year we went 7-5, which is obviously below program expectations, but we still beat Michigan State and Ohio State. So it is key to at least try to win those rivalry games, if not more, preferably more. As you mentioned against Washington, we just kind of went off. I mean, we won by 17, like we both mentioned, and as you mentioned in your segment, we thought it was going to be a shootout. I did not see us holding Washington to only 7 points. I would have never in a million years guessed that. So I mean, A plus performance by that defense. Underwood looked much better. Um, he once again, I feel like I say the same thing every week, but it's true, so it is what it is. He has all the tools to be the next big thing in college football. He just has to put it together. He just has to get a little bit more touch on his pass, kind of basically just experience, read the defense a little better, everything that would just come with time. But in terms of like the arm strength, the running vision, the running speed, all that stuff, he has everything he needs to be the next um, Jaden Daniels or someone like that. So he's just got to get polished up, and I mean every week he's getting a little better and a little better. Last week he was against Washington, he was 21 for 27. So, I mean, I enjoyed the 230 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. But one thing I'm looking for him on more is completion percentage because every now and then he'll have that. Is it Troy Melton? Former Michigan
Uh,
quarterback. Now I think he's Dallas's backup. Um, I'm gonna quickly Google his name. I think it's Troy Melton.
Troy Melton. I cannot. That name is not ringing a bell for some reason.
Oh, that's a baseball pitcher. Well, give me one
Oh,
second.
I'm like, I don't know who
I
that
know his
is.
I know
He's
his
a
name
Michigan
is
quarterback, and he's the
former
backup
Michigan
quarterback
quarterback
in.
transferred to
Oh, Joe
Texas.
Milton. Joe Milton.
Milton.
Okay.
Okay, Milton, not Melton. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like I know I'm not far off, but that doesn't sound right. But he is a classic example, kind of just also like Anthony Richardson for the Colts. Like you have all the tools. You're 6'4", you can throw the ball 100 yards, but it doesn't mean shit if you can't target your receiver and put it where he
hmm
needs it. And early on, Underwood was showing me a lot of that. And he is slowly, slow is even a relative term. Each week he's making steps.
hmm
And some weeks are bigger than others, but as long as he's learning and this is the new baseline, everything's going to be fine. So, in my opinion, going segueing the Washington into Michigan State, our key to success slash what we need to have happen to win is Underwood just being consistent. If we can get that, I don't think we have any problems.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those games where Michigan just kind of dominates from the first snap to the last snap. Like, I don't know if it's going to be 49 to nothing like it was a couple years ago, but I could see 30 to 7, 30 to 6, 2 field goals. Like, I really genuinely like Michigan State. The only thing that really worries me is Childs and that wide receiver, Marsh. I feel like,
Yeah, Marsh is legit.
yeah, they're both really, really good, but O line isn't great. Run game's just okay. I'm not worried about their defense really at all, personally. So I think as long as Michigan can, like you said, consistently run the ball. Bryce Underwood be consistent. Defense be consistent. I don't see a way that we lose this game personally. The only way I see Michigan losing is if Underwood has like a terrible 3 interception game, or we fumble it a couple times, or if somehow our defense just sucks. Like, and even then, I don't know if our offense would be able to be stopped by Michigan State. So I personally see this, like I said, I think it's going to be like 30 to 6, something along those lines.
I would love that. I see this going to be a lot closer. Unfortunately, just because Michigan State tends, besides, that one year, tends to play us and bring their A game against us every year, year in and year out. Other than that one, was it 39 nothing?
49.
40? Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Other than that, um, I still see Michigan winning, but I'm gonna say like 28-17. I do think it's in hand, but I don't think it's going to be as embarrassing, although I wish it was. I believe the line's 14 and a half, so at least with my score they would cover, but I would love another 49 nothing game. I mean, don't get me wrong, but We'll
Yeah,
see
I
what
mean,
happens, obviously.
as much as I would love a 49 nothing, I don't think that's going to happen by any means. And I mean, like you said, I was there last year when we played Michigan State, and it was a much closer game, and you could just feel it like the whole game. It could have went either way. And I mean, that's the team that, beat Ohio State last year. So, I don't know if we're necessarily better or worse than we were last year as a team. I just think we're better in places that will help us against Michigan State. Uh, Better than they did last year. Whereas I also think we're we're in a worse spot in terms of Ohio State, which
Oh,
we'll talk
yes.
about in a few weeks. But the D lineman that we lost and all that, I think, was the real difference maker in that Ohio State game. Whereas I think having the better quarterback this year and the run game and all that will help us against Michigan State.
Yeah, I'm not too excited for that Ohio State game, but we will talk about that when it comes to it. For
Yep.
now, we're awesome and they suck. And
Yep. Yep.
yeah, I don't see that game going in very well for us when it comes, but that's a little bit of ways away at least. Um,
Thankfully.
yeah, yes, a lot can happen between now and then, but
I just personally feel bad for the Michigan fans that are going to spend $700 to sit there and watch their team maybe score once.
see, and that was one of the main reasons when my wife, because I'd never went to Michigan, my wife did though. We would get season tickets with her student discount, and then every year we would just sell the Ohio State game, whether it's here or away, and the money we could make off that Ohio State ticket paid for the rest of the season.
Hmm.
So I got to watch Michigan State, Penn State, all the other games and stuff for free because the Ohio State ticket would cover the whole season ticket package.
Yeah, that does not
So,
surprise me because one of my friends went to the Texas game last year, the opening game, and he spent like $600 a ticket. And they were decent tickets, but like to be at that game would have pissed me off. I'm not gonna lie.
and that also unfortunately reminds me the last Michigan State game that I physically went to in person was the Trouble with the Snap game.
I knew you were gonna
So
say that.
one of these, oh my God, man, the vibe around campus after that was bordering on Armageddon. But
Oh yeah. I mean, shoot, I remember I watched it at my grandparents' house with three of my friends, and two of them were Michigan State fans, and one of them was a Michigan fan. And the Michigan fan literally was like, before the punt even happened, he was like, I don't know, bro. Something's gonna happen. We're gonna lose. This shit's crazy. He was just like,
that's
I can feel it. And I'm like, hopefully not. And then it happened, and it was just I
that's
will
what I
never
told
forget that, honestly.
that's what I told some random guy in the stands next to me because we were in the student section, and he was just like, "Oh man, this is so awesome!" Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I can't remember. There was like 10 seconds left or whatever. But I'm like, hey, until the clock has four zeros on it, you never know. So I
Hmm.
wasn't predicting something would happen. If in fact I thought it was in the bag, but I'm just like, I'm not gonna jinx it out loud. And
Yeah.
then sure enough, I'm like, son of a.
Yeah, it's like honestly top five worst moments in my sports watching career. It's right up there with the Dallas Cowboys playoff game. Uh,
Yep.
I'll never forget. I can tell you exactly where I was, where I was sitting, what angle I was watching the TV. Like I'll never forget that shit. But with that being said, that is all we have for today. Obviously, we had a weird week this week with some unforeseen circumstances on Wednesday, but we got to you this week on a Friday. It is what it is, but we made it. Next week we'll be back Wednesday at 6 p.m. as always. But with that being said, check out Fanatics. The link is in the bio. We appreciate you guys for watching. You can find me at JSoSweet, James at Gullet_James, and both of us at MIFB Network and MichiganFootballNetwork.com. Once again, we appreciate you guys for watching.